On today's show, how Jalen Green's playmaking can actually help erase some of the Houston Rockets' offensive issues. Plus, we take a look ahead at the matchup with the Memphis Grizzlies, what to look out for, and so much more. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. And while you're there, drop us a comment, say go Rockets, share your thoughts on the show. It helps us out a ton. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, NBA draft enthusiast, and diehard Houston Rockets fan, Madison Moore. You can track down on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Madison, this was supposed to be a fun start to the regular season, and the Rockets disappointed mightily in that first game against the Hornets. Let's start. Tell me what you saw in that game, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, first off, I saw the Rockets get off to a crazy good start and not be able to sustain it over the course of 4 quarters. I think largely was a team loss. Like, I think everybody on the team shares a bit of burden for that loss. But of course, now that we have 2 highly paid young stars on our team, I think they bear the burden, the heaviest burden for the loss. And it's their job to not only make sure they're getting going, but everybody else is getting going, and that they can sustain consistency across the game. And when teams like go on their runs, which is going to happen every game, teams go, this is a game of runs. Your stars are the guys who step up and quell those runs and stop them and get you into good offense and just take over in those moments, because those are the key moments that shift the momentum of games. And I think our stars failed in those moments last night.
Yeah, I want to get into that a little bit here. In particular, kind of the star part of the conversation. We're also going to talk a little bit about maybe some of the, just by extension, the Rockets' offensive issues and how that also kind of, bled into some of the bench stuff as well. And then a little bit later in the episode, we'll get into a look ahead at the Friday night matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies, which should be a ton of fun, right? With Ja Morant in town and everything. Zach Edey, seeing him go up against Alperen Sengun. That should be a really fun matchup. It's first off, Rockets fans, it's 2 sides of the spectrum where some people are like, it's okay, it's game 1, it's whatever. And then there's the other side. Everybody's doom and gloom about, oh my God, game 1 loss against the Hornets, whatever. I'm somewhere like in the middle. Like, it's an ugly, disappointing loss. It was an embarrassing loss, but like, is it the end of the world? No, I think a lot of the stuff that happened in that game was fixable. But one of the areas, and you and I are going to spend a little bit of time talking about this, was maybe some of the playmaking woes in this game, largely in particular from the Rockets' 2 star players in Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. When you are the focal point of the offense, when you're the the big guns, whatever you want to call them, it's not just your job to get yourself going. Like you were saying, it's your job to make life easier for your teammates to get those other guys involved as well. Now, looking at the actual stats from the game, I want to make sure I have these in front of me. Where are they? I had them a second ago. There it is. Sorry. Lost my tab for a second on Google Chrome. Alperen Sengun finished the night with just 5 assists. Not bad, but he also had 3 turnovers in there. So he had some, and that really bad one at the end of the game. Jalen Green, 0 assists for the game. Also 0 turnovers. So didn't really, set anybody up in that game. Now, what I thought was a bigger kind of, or tells a better story, I guess, is to look at the actual advanced stats for the playmakers in this game. And I think that tells a more complete picture as to what was going on in this game, because you could chalk it up to, oh, well, certain guys just weren't hitting shots. They'd have more assists and whatnot. Looking at the potential assist metric for this game, Fred VanVleet led the way with 13 potential assists against the Hornets. Alperen Sengun had 8 potential assists. Then further down the list, Thompson had 5, Jock Landale had 4, Reed Shepard had 3 potential assists, Tari Eason had 2 potential assists. Jalen Green only had 1 potential assist in this game. That's not good enough.
Yeah, it's completely unacceptable, but it's a very simple reason why he did not get any potential assists. Well, Jalen Green decided to become this 3-point shooter, this ultra 3-point shooter, and refused to really put paint pressure on the New Orleans Pelicans. And without getting paint pressure, you don't draw the defense in to actually get a lot of assists, to actually start to kick out. And because of that, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for Jalen to generate assists. Typically, when he had the ball, he came off a screen and took a 3. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of options there. And New Orleans clearly decided to take away the role of Sengun. I'm sorry.
It's cool.
My God.
I still do it in my head sometimes.
Oh my God. Yes. Charlotte decided to take away the role of Sengun, which gave Jalen the wide open threes or Fred VanVleet for that matter. Right. And so typically Jalen gets some assists, just pocket pass assists to Sengun. And not just that affecting Jalen's assist totals, but it also affects Sengun's assist totals because Sengun in the short roll often makes a lot of reads out of that position, and that often really triggers the offense and gets all the other guys involved on this team. And they didn't do that at all. And so once Jalen and Sengun kind of got gassed in the second half, or the shot stopped falling as much, that their team was completely out of rhythm, and there was really very few opportunities for other guys to get catch and shoot threes. I don't even remember Dylan Brooks taking a catch and shoot 3, or Fred VanVleet taking a catch and shoot 3, Jabari taking a catch. There were very few and far between, and that leads to your support players being out of rhythm. And with a team this talented, that's just unacceptable. And that's one of the things that these young stars have to learn is this is a team, and it's your job to not just those shots will always be there for your stars. It's your job to make sure your team is involved, and that elevates the play of everybody on the court. And I think that's something when they go back to film that they'll relook at. I understand those 3-pointers were open, Jalen. They were good shots, right? But 15 attempts at 3, like, dog, you're not, Steph Curry. Like, that's at some point, you have to understand, like, hey, I need to mix this up. I need to get my teammates involved. You got to understand how this game, is played in that way. And it's you don't want guys to be unconfident taking shots, but they need to understand how important it is to get everybody involved.
I have one more point that I want to make. We got a couple more concerns that we want to highlight here, talking about the bench production for the Houston Rockets in this game, which I think kind of also, is involved in this conversation in a way, right? Guys being out of rhythm, as well as one more note on Jalen Green's game against the Hornets. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. So what is Prize Picks? It's the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everyone. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. It's really that simple. You sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. It really is that simple. So download the app today, use code LOCKEDONNBA, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Picks app today, use code LOCKEDONNBA, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, Madison. So I want to get to the bench production, maybe some concerns with how the bench unit actually looked in this game. Didn't get to spend a lot of time talking about the bench guys in the initial recap episode. So I want to, kind of dig into those guys for a moment. But the other thing that really stood out to me in this game, and some of it might have been a mentality thing, some of it might have just been, hey, okay, he was locked into taking all these threes in the first place. It looked like Jalen was struggling to beat guys off the dribble in this game. I don't know if there were moments where Trey Mann was clamping Jalen. Like he was like in front of Jalen and Jalen couldn't beat him off the dribble. So it's not, I don't want to say it wasn't like for lack of trying to like get downhill at times, but almost like settling into, okay, well, I can't get past Trey, which is weird because Jalen usually has that lightning first step and can get past anybody. And so I thought that was really interesting to see. There were like just a handful of moments in the game where he'd like put the ball on the floor, try to make something happen. And then like Trey is just like glued to him. And I was like, this is either like really good defense from Trey Mann. Like he was playing some like otherworldly basketball, or maybe just Jalen just didn't have it that night. I don't know. It was interesting. It stood out to me.
Yeah, so I hadn't really noticed that. I felt like Jalen really didn't try, and I don't know. And to me, since the preseason, Jalen has kind of seemed tentative getting to the rim, but I think it's more about him trying to be measured in pace. Like he's really trying to get acclimated with this whole pace thing. So he's not trying to move 100 miles an hour. And I really like to see Jalen really attack mismatches, really set himself in situations where he's attacking a big who's slow-footed or the worst defender on the team. There was a guy, I can't remember his name, but it was a guy that I thought Jalen should have attacked more on Charlotte's team. Some of the poor defenders. And I often think sometimes we get into sets without having personnel involved, like personnel in mind on who you want to attack in these sets, because you can see throughout Charlotte's offense, they knew exactly who they wanted to put in ball screen actions. They had a plan for how they're going to get their offense, separated. And then going back to the star thing, I think LaMelo ability to get all of his guys involved, really translated to how good they played on defense against our stars in the second half.
And that that was one of the other things that really stood out is, Fred tried to be the savior in this game for the Rockets, right? He put up 8 shots in the fourth quarter. He was trying to put the team on. He just didn't have it that night. Jalen hit some big shots in that fourth quarter. He had 10 points, 5 makes. Like Jalen had some really good moments in that fourth quarter, but he also didn't have enough to get the team over the finish line. Like that was the other tough part is just, we're still kind of at a loss trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be the person to bring home wins for this Rockets team when the going gets tough, when it's in crunch time. Jalen came really close to being the guy to do it. And unfortunately, in this game, Alperen Sengun was the other guy who didn't deliver in crunch time because he was struggling against Grant Williams. He had that, awful turnover late in the game. Look, a lot to clean up, a lot to fix from this first game moving forward. We know that Ime is going to do that. He's great at making adjustments on a game-by-game basis. The other area of concern from this one, though, was the bench guys. This Rockets team, one of the strengths of this team supposedly is the depth, is the talent, 1 through 10 on this roster. And honestly, Madison, outside of Amin Thompson, I wasn't really impressed with any of the other bench guys from this game for the Rockets.
Yeah, it was a really disappointing game for my bench. I mean, Amin played great defense, but he was kind of largely non-existent in the second half offensively as well, and really affecting the game on the offensive end of the court. And I think that's going to be a thing that the team is going to have to navigate is how do we make adjustments when teams make adjustments? How do we keep Amin involved with the limited shooting? But also Reed Shepherd, I mean, to me was the first time I've seen him look sped up. This is the first time I've ever seen Reed Shepherd look sped up. And it was like he wasn't even, he was just, as soon as he touched the ball, he had to make a move. I thought he was being aggressive, but he wasn't really surveying. And it honestly, he had some careless turnovers, some very sloppy basketball, really uncharacteristic. But, I'm not going to beat up too much. It's a rookie's first NBA game. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that
three dimes in there. He made some things happen. And we're not going to say like the bench guys didn't do. Yeah, well, like the bench guys didn't do nothing in this game. Like you look up and down, like Tari had a couple rebounds, couple assists, but that's also something where you think like, okay, Tari's a lot more active on the glass usually. Like where's he at in the rebounding department? Reed still had the 3 dimes, but you're right, he had the 3 turnovers. It was just nothing really stood out from the bench, and you were kind of thinking like this team, that was supposed to be a strength of this team.
Well, I think it didn't really stand out because they didn't have good floor general play. And once they stopped getting turnovers, once they stopped getting, these live ball actions, plays, the bench offense really came and stagnated, and they actually turned the ball over a good bit. And I think their minutes got cut short because they didn't come out with the right energy, and we didn't really get to see a lot of them at all. I mean, Cam Whitmore only played for one stint last night, which was, wild. But it was just the point of emphasis as, they had used all their mistakes up. And that's when you want guys that's when you need a floor general to get guys set up and get you into sets and execute the offense. I think execution was very poor down the stretch. And I think that's why Reed is so important, because other than Fred, Reed is probably going to be our best executor down the stretch of games, outside of Reed and Sengun, even though Sengun had a poor night last night. But a guy who can get guys lined up and generate offense, just like Fred did at the end of the game to get Jalen those good shots down the stretch. And we need more of that from Fred. Like, hey, Fred, like you said, Fred tried to kind of take the game over. And once he realized he didn't have it, he went to playing, setting up offense. We need that to be recognized earlier in the game. That should have gone on when the Hornets made their first 8-0 run. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, let's take a timeout. Let's set up, let's run something. And then guess what? After we run something, because that's what they were doing. They get timeouts, come out with a set and get a good shot. But then it was over. Then we're back to normal pick and roll 3-point shooting, where those sets should have been run over and over again until you generated 3-4 buckets in a row. And then your team is more relaxed. But I think that affected the rest of the bench. It also affected the starters and their ability to actually get going in these games. And they didn't get good looks. Like I never felt like the bench were generating quality looks. And I think that is why it was such a struggle for them.
Yeah, and I think that largely came down to, right, we saw, and at least this looks like we've got one game to go off of, right, with the full rotation in effect. We saw Ime's trusting Jalen to be with that second unit, right? So if Jalen's going to be out there with that second unit, then those are going to be the lineups where, again, it's really imperative for him to be able to play make a little bit, not just looking for his own shot, but to be able to get downhill, play make, not just settle for threes on the perimeter, and involve his teammates so that they can also be in rhythm, right? Reed Shepherd didn't get, a single catch and shoot 3 attempt. Atari Eason, I think, settled for like that one turnaround fadeaway for his one made bucket. Like, it was some really sloppy looking offense from that bench unit, especially in their second stint in that third quarter as Charlotte made their run to get back in the game. Honestly, Madison, this would have been a game where I would have loved to see some Aaron Holiday and Jeff Green. Like some vet, like stabilizing, like just be out there, calm things down a little bit, right? The young guys looking a little bit sped up at times. What's the point of having those guys on the roster if you can't go to them in a moment like that, where you see the rookies, where you see the young guys, maybe deer in headlights a little bit. Where's my email line? Here it is.
It looked like the moment was too big for a lot of players out there.
See, there we go, right? Like that would have maybe been the moment. Hey, okay, third quarter runs happening. You don't want to go back to your starters too quickly. Throw Aaron out there for a second. Throw Jeff Green out there for a second, right? Buy your starters a little bit more, a little bit more of a breather on the bench rather than throwing the entire starting five back out there at the top of the fourth like Ime wound up doing. Then you can kind of Band-Aid fix the situation a little bit with some Aaron Holiday, Jeff Green minutes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think in this way, like the stars, Alperen and Jalen will also realize once the ball is popping, they will get good looks too. I think a lot of the good looks that Jalen generated this preseason were off ball, shoot threes off the initial action where the ball is now popping and the defense is in rotation.
And it comes back and finds him at the end of the possession.
It comes back and finds him at the end for a catch and shoot three, which Jalen was kind of on fire on catch and shoot last night. It seems like that's the real skill that he's added so far. And so it just, a lot of it is letting the game come to you, but also making the game easy on your other guys so they can make it easier on you as well. And it's just like, once MA went on those short rotations with his starters, guys are going to be gassed. You know what I mean? And you need these other guys to be confident in their games because they've been playing well throughout the game and making the right decision so that the offense can begin to flow. With the team being this loaded, passing is going to be so vital to their offensive success. Everybody has to chip in. There is no James Harden on this team. You know what I mean? There is no individual engine on this team. The team is going to have to play for one another and make passes to get each other involved. And that starts with the two stars.
Could not agree more. And that's one of the things that we hopefully see change in their second game of the season, taking on the Memphis Grizzlies Friday night. We're going to take a look ahead at that game, some other things that we want to see in that one, expectations, a quick little preview, if you will. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you actually place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. It really is that simple. Head on over to FanDuel.com. Take a look at all the different odds that they have available. You can check out their parlay builder, different season awards, conference winners, or just the outright favorites to win this year's Super Bowl. Right now, the Kansas City Chiefs plus 430, the Ravens right behind them at plus 550, the Lions plus 750, the 49ers plus 850, the Bills are sitting at plus 1100, and then your Houston Texans plus 1300. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, a look ahead to Friday night as the Grizzlies are in town to face your Houston Rockets. Rockets, obviously, 0-1 to start the season, that disappointing loss against the Hornets, but they get a chance to make up for it against the Grizzlies. This should be a fun, high-octane game. The Grizzlies coming in 1-0, their first win coming at the expense of the Utah Jazz, but it was a close game, 126-124. I don't know if this was a good Jazz game or a bad Grizzlies game, but what we do know is that Zach Edey, for all the pub and all the excitement about him, he fouled out in 15 minutes of run. He had 5 points and 5 rebounds and 6 fouls. He was donezo in 15 minutes. So if that's anything to look forward to in this game is, oh my God, what is Zach Edey going to do trying to check Alperen Sengun? He might foul out before the first TV commercial break of the game trying to check Alp.
Yeah, I did not know that, and that is absolutely shocking. In 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
Absolutely ridiculous, y'all. I mean, I can't that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, and also, like, clearly there wasn't a lick of defense being played, 126-124. There couldn't have been much defense being played in this game. But I think it's a good sign for the Rockets, man. It looks like, Memphis isn't returning, at least immediately, to their former selves. And we knew there were going to be some growing pains with a rookie in tow, as well as, they have some injuries on the team. But Ja Morant is still that guy. I think Ja Morant is still going to be at a extremely high level. But yes, they're putting in a new offense, and so that's probably going to have some growing pains while they're figuring those things out. And I think this is an opportunity for the Rockets to kind of redeem themselves while playing a much better team, right? Yeah, I hope they get into the film and really understand the things that went wrong and come out with on really a mission. And I like to see the Rockets respond with a sense of urgency. Last year in that Golden State game, I felt like the Rockets' sense of urgency wasn't there. And that's something I really look for as a key in teams, right? Do you have a sense of urgency where you hit another gear when you're in crisis mode or when you're in desperation mode? And I like to see Rockets responding to an embarrassing loss a game they should have won with some real energy, some real fire, and sustain that for all 4 quarters.
I couldn't agree more. That's definitely something you want to see, a rebound, right? You don't want to get off to like an 0-2 start. The Grizzlies are obviously projected to be one of like the better teams in the Western Conference this year. Again, a lot of pundits and ESPN and whatnot have them in like the top 4 of the Western Conference. I don't know if this is going to be that same Grizzlies team from a couple years ago. Again, Ja Morant is still one of the most electric players in the NBA. I'm very curious to see how the Rockets ultimately match up with this Grizzlies team. That's going to be the matchups across the board are going to be really fun. I'm expecting Marcus Smart is probably going to be the primary on Jalen Green. So, like, what does that do to Jalen Green, right? We're coming off a game where Jalen settled a lot. And it's tough to say settled because, again, Ime said it post game, like those are I think that they're good shots, right? They are good shots, but at some point you have to identify, hey, the shot's not going in. What can I do? Because again, you can't just say, okay, it's a good shot, so I'm going to keep taking it. No, if it's not falling, you got to change something up. So, what's that going to look like against Marcus Smart, right? Marcus Smart's one of the best perimeter defenders, one of the best point of attack defenders in the NBA, and he's a guy that knows how to get under your skin, right? So what's that going to look like with Jalen Green being guarded by him? On the flip side, who's going to be the primary on Ja Morant? I would imagine that Ime is going to stick Dylan Brooks on him, which I think might be a mistake. I'm torn on it. Like, is he gonna let Fred guard Ja, or is he gonna let Dylan guard Ja?
I think Fred's going to start on him because the point of attack defense is just so good. But I mean, I think the game plan has to be pack the paint. Pack the paint. Make them all 3-point shooters except Desmond Bane. And I hope that is the game plan and it's going to be a team thing. But the guy who probably is best to guard Ja is actually Jalen, especially with his newfound consistency on defense. But we know Jalen's quick twitch. He stays in front of guys. He can mirror your movements on the way to the basket and kind of make it tough and allow for his help defenders to really get into position to further contest Ja Morant. So, I think Jalen would actually be the best matchup, but we might not get to see that into the fourth quarter. So Jalen doesn't, kind of tire himself out.
Honestly, man, that's actually a fantastic point, right? That was one of the bright spots from the Hornets game, is seeing some of those individual defensive possessions that Jalen Green had, where he had some great contests, he had some great just man-to-man defense, and you're right, from a just pure physical athleticism, physical gifts standpoint, Jalen is probably the best equipped player, at least of the starting lineup, to be able to contain Ja a little bit, to slow him down. It's going to be really fun to see Amin Thompson when he eventually checks into the game, because there's going to be some minutes where Amin is out there and he's absolutely going to be the primary for stretches of the game against Ja Morant, using that length, using that size. Obviously still, a 99th percentile athlete just like Ja. That's going to be a really fun matchup. The 3-point shooting is going to be interesting, though. You said, they can't let Desmond Bane get loose. They also can't let Santi Aldama get loose, man. Game 1, Santi Aldama shot 5 of 10 from 3-point range, and then Desmond Bane shot 4 of 10. So yeah, it was definitely a track meet between the Grizzlies and the Jazz. They were getting up and down, but those two guys combining to shoot 45% from downtown. And then former Rockets legend Jay Huff shot 3 of 5 from downtown off the Grizzlies, a bench, 13 points in 22 minutes played, stepping up in kind of a big way for them with Zach Edey fouling out.
Yeah, man. Jay Huff, man, that dude just won't go away. He got game, dog. And it's good to see him actually getting minutes on a real team now. But I think I think 3-point defense seems like it might be important with those guys in tow. I didn't know Jay Huff was out there shooting the lights out like that. I didn't follow last game. But I think you still got to live and die by keeping Ja out of the paint and, really stopping Ja. But that's the thing about Ja. He gets into the paint and then he starts kicking out and getting everybody involved. And so that's going to be a really interesting thing to see. Are they going to, because we've seen MA implement one-on-one defense with guys who really play make and let one player get all of theirs. We've seen it with Jokic. He tried it, and it typically works with Jokic, and then he's tried it against Luka, which didn't go as well. But it'll be interesting to see how he defends Ja, just because we didn't see any of it last year. But ultimately, I think those bigs are not very good defenders, interior defenders, and Jaren will be out. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. is still out.
Yeah. So Jaren will be out. So I'd like to see the Rockets really punish them down low. I like to see Sengun continue to punish guys down low and pass quickly out of double teams when guys try and pack the paint on him. And I like to see Jalen, it's clear that you can get up 12 to 13 threes whenever you want. But I'd like to see you to continue to put pressure on that rim, continue to keep guys honest, and have an eye for getting downhill, getting a paint touch, and kicking the ball out to your other guys. And I think with Jay Huff, or Santi Aldama defending the rim, you should be able to have a lot of good luck at the rim against those type of guys.
This should be a game where Alperen Sengun, with the lack of bigs for the Grizzlies, and then again Jalen Green with the lack of true rim protection for the Grizzlies, should be able to have a couple of really big nights. But again, number one thing that we want to look to, kind of to put a bow on this whole episode, going back to our first segment, right? We want to see the star guys create at a high level for their teammates. Alperen Sengun generated some good opportunities. Guys just didn't capitalize on them against the Hornets. Jalen Green, we just need to see him generating those opportunities, right? Just get downhill, especially if he's going to be commanding that second unit, if Ime is going to trust him to lead those bench guys, at the end of first quarters, at the end of third quarters. If that's going to be Jalen's spot in the rotation, then he's going to have to be a lot better at involving his teammates, so it's not just him against the world, not just him relying on that 3 ball, and if it doesn't fall, then suddenly we see the Rockets getting into these, sputtering, moments where their offense just can't generate anything, resembling, competent offense. But that's what we're looking forward to in this game. We want to know what you're looking forward to out of the Grizzlies matchup. Give us some thoughts in those YouTube comments. Madison, before we get out of here, give me a prediction. Win, lose, final score.
We're gonna win, man. Rockets are gonna come out with a vengeance, man. We're always positive until they give me a reason not to be, and they bet not give me a reason not to be. Y'all won't like me on Locked On Rockets, man. I won't like me. But also, just a real quick add in. I'm also going to be watching for that Santi Aldama pop with Alperen Sengun, how he continues to handle that, because that was an issue with Grant Williams down the stretch of these games that kind of made MA kind of think about, go and switch everything. So I think that dynamic may pose a similar threat. So I want to watch that as well. But yeah, man, Rockets, we're going 1-1.
Okay, 1-1. I like it too. I'm going Rockets. I'm sensing a bounce back. I'm sensing I won't say a complete blowout of the Grizzlies, but I'm going to say at least a double-digit victory here. I'm going with that. I think it's going to be a strong performance from Houston. Get back to 1-1, 500. Madison, you know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Madman Leaks. Come talk Rockets basketball and NBA draft.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. And while you're there, drop us a comment, say go Rockets, give us your thoughts on the episode, all that good stuff. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.